Hey, welcome to Filler. I'm Joe.
And I am Bruce Springsteen.
He rehearsed that.
I thought of it on the train ride over here.
It sounds like you did. So, this is our deal. We talked about Blink-182 for a glorious 3 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And now we are talking about Bruce Springsteen for an insert adjective.
Blue.
6 episodes. Blue 6 episodes, everybody.
I was like on the spot, Mad Libs there.
So in the way that I kind of led the Blink episodes, because that wasn't really your realm, you're going to be leading me through Bruce Springsteen and all of New Jersey, correct?
I am dating a Jersey girl, so I guess that makes me an expert. I'm from upstate New York, which is basically worse New Jersey.
I disagree, but that's me as a Brooklynite. So,
In which way?
I prefer upstate New York to New Jersey.
Not where I'm from.
Oh, I never went that far.
Yeah, if you went that far, you would see what I'm saying.
I'm getting the vibe that like upstate, when you go past a certain point, it starts becoming the South.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
No. I almost posted this on Blue Sky today at the LVP band. Go follow that. It blows my mind how many Confederate flags and shitty country music fans there are in New York. It's like you didn't even like you were in the North during the Confederacy. Like what? Like,
yeah.
Who do you think you are?
Yep. Did you see the Confederate flags on the fire trucks in Long Island? They got fined.
Oh yeah, it was like $15,000 or something.
Yeah, which is insane because granted, you're Long Island, so like, I get it, but at the same time, you're still New York.
Yeah, it's not Staten Island. That's something else.
Yeah, we could at least argue that's like south of the city. Anyway,
Yeah.
Steve,
Yeah.
Tell us about Bruce.
Okay, so yeah, we went into this because, as you may have heard on our Blink series, which if you haven't, go check that out either before this or after. We went through Blink-182 because Joe grew up with them and I didn't, so it was kind of a revisiting for him and a new exposure for me. I'd only heard a couple songs. I had kind of an idea of them as like a shitty band that wasn't worth my time, basically. And this is kind of the opposite in that I grew up with Bruce Springsteen. I have a lot of history listening to him, and I can get into a little bit more on that. But you've always thought of him as really overrated. And so we thought, okay, we'll go one for one here, although this is going to be twice as long of a series, examining all the studio albums of Bruce Springsteen, which is 21, is not including any of the B-side stuff, and unfortunately is not covering literally half the battle of Bruce's appeal, which is his live show. I think this is going to be a very fun and different examination based on the kind of artist Bruce is, the kind of influence he's had, and starting to see some through lines, I think, with our own band because of how much he's affected my songwriting and like taught me how, basically. But to be fair, there was more Blink in my music than I thought there was too. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm really excited to do this, and also a little scared because, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and defend a billionaire to the death, but you might say some things that I'll be like, no. So
I mean, Mark said some racially charged things in the 90s, and I can't defend that. So
yeah. Yeah, it's not going to be that kind of thing as much, but it's also farther back, so it's much more of a different time.
Yeah.
To prepare for this episode, I've been re-listening to Bruce's memoir, Born to Run, to get the context for each album as I go through it. And we've both already read the book before, so now that was just a refresher for me to kind of guide the history the way you did with Blink when we went through those.
Fun fact about when I read the book, I was enjoying it. I did enjoy it. I stand by it. I think I still have the copy at home, and I would reread it. I think it is rereadable in lots of ways that books aren't. But when I had it several years ago, I was reading it in order to get into Bruce because I wanted to understand what I didn't get. Mm-hmm. So I did come at it from the angle of, okay, maybe his music isn't hitting me. I'm also a big literary guy. Let me try to get to him through a prose approach. Mm-hmm. And it still didn't click for me. Some things did, as we'll see when we get to other albums like down the road, but not everything did. And I did go album by album with the book. But the fun fact about it is that one day I left it on my coffee table, and Franklin, I guess, was upset that I left. And so Franklin
Your pug.
Franklin, my pug. Yes, we should have clarified that for everyone listening.
You don't just have a little man
named Franklin lives in my apartment, but I do call him my little man. So Franklin the pug got upset that I was leaving him, and he like truly took a chunk out of the corner. Didn't hit any words, but he took this big bite out of it, and I was like very upset at the time because I really try to cherish my books. And then I picked it up, and I was like, no, it's mine now, because this is how I feel about Bruce. I'm trying, but there's a corner bitten off.
How poetic. All right, let's get into a little bit of our backstories and preconceived notions about Bruce before we dive into him on his own. So I'll start by saying kind of what my history with him has been. So I grew up listening to him because of my parents. He's my dad's favorite artist of all time and has been since he was 14 years old. He was one of the first concerts he had seen. He had seen him at the Utica Memorial Auditorium, I think, on the Darkness on the Edge of Town tour in '79. And he came out of there absolutely blown away. I've sent you a video from that tour. I think they were playing in Phoenix, Arizona in 1978.
Was that the Rosalita song?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was like that.
Gotcha.
You know, just crazy energy. Bruce has said his goal when playing live is to leave the audience exhausted. And my dad was the perfect age for it. So he went out and bought all his records and followed him his whole life. You know, it's been like almost 50 years that he's been listening to Bruce Springsteen, and got my mom more into it when they met. And so now my mom has her own favorite Bruce things too. So my first real concert was Bruce as well. If you don't count the American Idol Season 6 on tour concert that I saw, which you shouldn't. No, I saw him in 2008 on the Magic Tour, and it blew my mind. You know, I recognized more songs than I thought I did because Bruce was just always playing in my house. It was always like Bruce, Frank Sinatra, Jackson Brown, but Bruce was always the one that really stuck with me. And Jackson Brown too, to some extent. I never really had a Rat Pack moment or a Frank Sinatra thing, but Bruce always spoke to me. Since then, I've seen him 3 more times, which is tied with another one of my favorite bands, Mannequin Pussy, that I also revere for their live show. And it's probably up there with Foo Fighters for best concert I've ever seen. And that was a crazy concert because I was there front row at Firefly in 2014. I had stayed at one stage in the sun for 13 hours straight to see them, and Arctic Monkeys right before. So it was like, I think it was Congos, Bleachers, Iron and Wine, Arctic Monkeys, and Foo Fighters all on one stage.
That's very 2010s.
Yeah, very much. Like Congos, who the fuck is that? But Bleachers, I mean, that was their first album. Yeah. And that was crazy. And I always like Bleachers more than Fun anyway, so that was good. Foo Fighters are probably the only band that's ever rivaled Bruce live for me, and I've seen him on this last tour for, I think, Letter to You. At 75 years old, he's still got it. Like they're all a little bit slower than they used to be, but like how much slower is shocking. Like how little they're actually affected by their age. They're just still amazing. And that's the thing, like the studio albums are half the battle because everyone knows that he's legendary for his 3+ hour live shows. But he has inspired me endlessly with his storytelling approach to songwriting, fearless stage presence, versatile and expansive sound, appreciation for music, both old and new, political stances mostly, and being a rock in my relationship with my parents. So I've got some emotional attachment here that I'll have to parse through to be as critical as I can, but also explain why it speaks to me and accept that both of these things are valid when talking about something you love.
Yeah. It sounds like you have both the sentimental attachment to him, but at the same time are seeing the genuine musical and talented aspect of him as well, which I find interesting because I did not feel like that with Blink-182 when we talked about them, because I can note the simplicity there immediately, and just really mine was mostly sentimentality. Yeah. And they could write a good hook.
You did break down some stuff that I hadn't really considered and kind of made me think about it a little differently, though, with Blink, and did make me learn to give them more credit than I did before.
That's good. Immediately listening, as we've gone through, I think he's a better musician, not even like the same echelon kind of way.
No, it's not the same.
Like, it's not even apples and oranges. It's like apples and like an orange on Neptune. Like, I just appreciate that because I think that'll be a different conversation than what we had with Blink-182 when we're talking about the sentimental side and also he's a good musician side or a good songwriter side, that kind of thing. Yeah. As far as my preconceived notions and any disclaimers I have to say, my first bullet point, we were just talking before recording about my flat tone. So I think this is fitting that it's my first bullet point. I'm not saying this in a facetious way. I'm not being sarcastic. I don't get the hype behind him, and that's where I'm coming from. Not in a way of immediately saying I think he sucks, or not in a way of just saying dude's from New Jersey, I'm from Brooklyn, he sucks. Like, nothing that flippant.
You could if you want. You're not going to hurt my feelings.
Right, no, and that's not what I'm going for, because I don't want to express that, because I think sometimes when I do talk about the things I love and I talk about the things that I'm critical about, I think I can come across as just being very dismissive off the bat. I wasn't approaching this as dismissive, and I don't think I ever have. I think I've given him a lot of fair shots, and it never really clicks with me. And so I didn't grow up with him in the same way as you, and in the way that it was kind of like ingrained in you from the start for your parents. Yeah, I grew up with a lot of classic rock, so that's like Beatles with Bruce, with Bob Dylan, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, all that stuff. Mostly because of the radio station in New York. Yeah, and my dad really being into classic rock, and Bruce would come on the radio, couldn't tell you who he was. In my memories, so I'm familiar with the songs from just like I guess feeling or just an AURAL oral kind of memory, but not in any identifiable way. Yeah, I just lean towards heavier things, I guess. So I said a little bit about being into his memoir, and that's really where I got into him, and that's where I really came to respect him as a person, as an artist, and everything. His music still didn't just click for me, aside from one album, which I don't want to say because I don't want to spoil anything. Yeah, where I start to lean away from him more ardently is as the person in his latter days of his career, and that's mostly because in his early days he esteems himself as this working class hero, which I think he was when he started his career. As his career moved on, it feels disingenuous to me more and more as he continues to sing about it. Not in the concert kind of way, because people are going to sing their hits. I get that. Right, yeah. It's more so a thing of, and this might be me being wrong too, and just might be my idea and perception of him that might be corrected when I get to listening to these albums. He strikes me as the guy who, at least through the 80s that we've listened to, when he's in his 40s and has a successful music career, he's still singing about the working man and the boss man and the 9 to 5 and the factory, and it rings hollow because he can be such an emotional songwriter, and then he sings about that, and I don't want to hear him tell that story anymore. Yeah. Whether or not it applies to him anymore, it can just be annoying to hear an artist stick to a shtick. Yeah. So I get that for sure. I think some of the context, and when we get to the later albums and see what he's really diving into at each stage of his life, will kind of paint a better picture of how genuine it is. Again, full disclaimer, he's 75 now and a billionaire. Yeah. But he got half of that $1 billion at age 70 when he sold his whole catalog to Sony. So it's a little different than a Nepo baby or something. Like, he did work up a lot, but I think the path he took to get there and how long it actually took him for him to make like money is interesting and kind of reveals subtextual layers to his songs about like how he actually feels about being that guy who's writing about the working man. Because I mean, we're artists, we get imposter syndrome all the time. Sure. To see someone that successful get it shows like that just never goes away, and that
I'm glad that I'm going through the book again as I listen, because it's really making me pick up on things I never did before.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why I respect him, at least to a certain level. I do genuinely respect him and his work, because I know that he worked for it.
Yeah.
And I understand him selling the rights was kind of, he's in his 70s. He's trying to set up his family. Like, I'm not even coming against that.
Oh, no.
It's just, there's something that continues to rub me the wrong way about it. And it is that, like, lack of, it's just like some ringing hollow at some points. I do want to say, despite how I feel about him, I can't deny his effect on music. I can't deny his effect on American culture and whatnot. That's indelible.
Right.
And that's not something that I'm contending against. And I even want to note, because I said it on the doc and I do want to say it out loud, that it's just, I feel like as I've grown older and our world has become more harsh for people our age, I think I've become more radical.
Yeah.
And so with my becoming more radical in my ideals and my values, I think his ideas and values, for being perhaps radical at the time, just seem very like, well, duh, to me in 2025.
It's a good point. I mean, because, it was radical at the time, and he, was involved in subculture and things that I'll get into in a second, that, to go from that to being, podcast buddies with Barack Obama, like the ultimate, neo-lib.
Who everyone loves, but everyone forgets is a war criminal.
Yeah, and it's hard, because you want to just take in how cute it is that, the first black president and the Jersey Man songwriter are best buddies now, and they're sharing stories about life and whatnot. And I started listening to Renegades earlier this week, because I was like, let me see what this is like. I can do a pretty good impression of both of them. So I sometimes in the shower, I'll just like talk to myself as both of them.
So you're your own podcast.
Yeah, it's very fun, actually. But then I remember Obama like grew ICE, and he was supposed to be like pro-immigration, but whatever. It's the older you get, the more detached you get from the immediate concerns and whatnot. And he's rich, maybe he's not the hero of the working man anymore, but I don't think that discredits the impact he has had, and that he does show genuine care still, maybe not as much as he used to with his own things going on, but I think more than most. But that's a parasocial thing that, like, I'm just projecting.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think especially as I get older, I recognize I don't want to look up to heroes.
Yeah.
I don't want to have heroes. I want to take inspiration from what they do, not who they are.
Yeah.
And kind of cap it there, as so many people get canceled for this or come out as that. People are imperfect and people are flawed, and I get that. But as a child, that's not really instilled in us.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's actually something I try to teach my students, or that people are flawed. Do not put them on a pedestal.
Yes.
Because there will come days where you realize, I made my identity on you, and you're not the best person. But honestly, no one's the best person. So why don't you make your identity on values that you might agree that that person did their best on, or some art that inspires you, or something like that.
Yeah.
But we're getting in a whole aesthetic philosophy field there.
Last thing I'll say to kind of actually counter what you said about his influence on people and like that being worthy of respect. It is, but it also doesn't mean you have to like what he does, even if you like the people he inspired.
Right.
Because I look at like U2 inspiring Radiohead. It's
I thought you were going to say he inspired you too, and I was like, I don't get that.
Oh, no.
Through line at all.
No, but like U2 inspiring Radiohead, and I fucking hate U2, and I love Radiohead.
Yeah.
Like, okay, thanks, guys. At least we got the better version now, you know?
I can't even suggest we should do a U2 episode because I can't.
No, I tried this.
Yeah.
I tried doing the YouTube deep dive. I got through Boy and was like, I just want to listen to The Cure instead. I don't care.
Are you talking U2 to me, though? Have you heard
the Adam Scott podcast?
Adam Scott Aukerman? Fire.
Yeah.
Got me through the albums, but I was more excited to listen to their podcast than the albums.
Okay, let's get into the Bruce
Nice.
Backstory. So, Bruce Frederick Joseph Springsteen, born September 23rd, 1949, to an Italian mother from whom he got his hard work ethic and an Irish father from whom he got his mental illness. He was inspired by Elvis, the Beatles, Cream, Jimi Hendrix, Roy Orbison, James Brown, Van Morrison, and wanting to get laid. Despite his hard work ethic, he never wanted a job, and he only worked hard at what he felt was worth it. Growing up poor and seeing the misery of his father and other blue-collar workers of the 1950s and 60s Freehold, New Jersey, did the following. It inspired his songs about the plight of the working man and showed him he never wanted that life for himself. At one point, he lived in a surfboard factory with his band Steel Mill, and they practiced and gigged constantly to make ends meet. His rebellious nature and working-class background combined to a mass appeal to hippies and preps alike. His experiences in Greenwich Village with gay and underground subcultures, having a racially integrated band, and interest in the lives of others has kept him open to people of all races, genders, sexualities, etc. He has never done drugs because he was too afraid, and didn't drink for the first time for a long time after witnessing the seething alcoholism of his father that later developed into full-on schizophrenic psychosis. He was signed to Columbia Records in 1972 as a solo artist. He was just brought up to their office with an acoustic guitar, played a couple songs, and they signed him. Clive Davis was involved, and his manager at the time, Mike Appel, just got that meeting for him. But because he was signed as a solo artist, all of his studio albums are credited as just Bruce Springsteen, while the live albums featuring the E Street Band include them in the billing. Mm-hmm. So he kind of surprised the people at Columbia Records with his band because they thought they were getting another Bob Dylan when they signed him. So he's like, nah, you got to see me in front of a band. Let me bring in my band. And they were not really impressed with the E Street Band at first. They were like, well, this is not what we signed up for. And, it was all of their first time recording professionally. So it's a little sloppy, and you kind of hear it on their debut record, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey, which is, as per Bruce, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey, released January 5th, 1973. This album is full of stories about himself and other people that he has witnessed, with names changed to protect the innocent. The members of the E Street Band at this time are Vinny Mad Dog Lopez on the drums, David Saintjes on piano, Gary W. Talent on bass, Danny Federici on organ, and the one, the only, Clarence Clemens on the saxophone. So, this album sounds a little scrappy. They're kind of finding their footing in the studio together and bringing the songs that Bruce has been writing that got him signed just on his writing alone to life. And I think you can hear that scrappiness in it. What did you think of this album?
The word I used was shotgun spray to describe one song, how one was worse than another to me. Mm-hmm. And looking at my notes now, they're really all over the place. Yeah. I went into it, I was excited because I really like following artists from the beginning through their career when I'm trying to get into them, going chronologically. And I found that despite there being great musicianship and clearly good songwriting, I didn't think it was particularly catchy or memorable for the majority of the album.
Wow. Okay.
There might be like a catchy line here or a melodic something there, but things that stood out to me were things that I wrote, and some of it was like a quick line of a lyric or some melody remind me of something else. My overall take was, while I understand that his songwriting is novel and fantastic for it remains to be fantastic, but for then is a new thing. It's kind of like spinning Bob Dylan in his own way, a little scrappier, which is funny because Bob Dylan's super scrappy. Right. I would rather read short stories through Bruce's voice than hear his songs. So I like the content, I like the themes, I like the messages, and I'm bored listening to him in the way that looking at the lyrics, I'm like, this is a good story, though. That's where I landed for this album.
Gotcha. I think that's interesting because there's a lot of songs, I think, on this album that are very catchy.
Which stood out to you?
I mean, Blinded by the Light, great opening. It always bugs me that the bigger hit is the Manfred Mann cover. Have you heard that?
I don't think so. I'll check that out after.
Manfred Mann's Earth Band covered this song, and it was their only hit. And if there's anything sadder than a one-hit wonder, it's a one-hit wonder whose only hit is a cover.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Alien Ant Farm, even if that might be an even better version of Smooth Criminal.
Alien Ant Farm, are you okay? Are you okay?
Oh, no! So there's some... but no, that stupid Blinded by the Light cover is so bad. For some reason, instead of revved up like a deuce, they say revved up like a douche.
Yeah, that confused me as a child.
Yeah.
So I guess I am familiar with that song.
Yeah, you know that song.
I've heard both versions, and I didn't know what revved up like a deuce or revved up like a douche were. And so maybe that's where I started to hate Bruce Springsteen, because I didn't understand what he was saying when I was a kid.
Yeah, this album really does show, and for a couple going forward, really shows some signs of the times, like him calling people cats.
Yep.
That's some old shit. But yeah, people don't really say deuce anymore for a 2-seater sports car.
See, I just learned that today. Literally, It is March 25th, 2025, and I learned what a deuce is.
Yeah.
But even though like some of his language there is 100% dated, he has really good rhymes. Like he has really catchy lyrics. Like on Blinded by the Light, he says, with a boulder on my shoulder, feeling kind of older. It just rolls. Like some brimstone baritone anti-cyclone. I would get that tattooed on my body.
I know.
And it's just a cool image.
And that's what I think his appeal seemed to be to the people who signed him at first, that they thought they were getting another Bob Dylan because he's this witty wordsmith with an acoustic guitar and a stronger voice. And the thing is, like, the sense that I get from this album, because I know what's coming later, is he's 22 years old, or 23, whatever he was here. He's just throwing it all out there and like trying to impress you with how wordy he is. And that's the kind of thing you only get at like an early point in an artist's career when they're literally starving, because he's couch surfing and like playing for change at bars.
Yeah.
That's how he's making his living, because he'd rather starve and play music than work in the factory and become miserable like his dad. I get the sense that some of this needed to be edited down a little bit, but you're only going to capture that like youthful energy and like need to impress once. And I think the fact that he could take this and kind of evolve with it over the next few records shows that even while he's finding himself, he's still putting together really impressive music, like really grand arrangements of his songs that are trying not to be guitar heavy, because he knows he's a good guitarist already. He's like the best in his music scene. So he's like, well, I need to challenge myself and stand out more. There's a dime a dozen good guitar players. Like, let me get better at singing and songwriting, and then try not to lean on guitar as a crutch, which lets his piano player and organ player and saxophonist all shine. And you don't really hear that in a rock band.
That's something that did stand out to me. And he struck me more as, instead of a Bob Dylan sound-alike or a Bob Dylan spinoff or whatever you want to call him, he came across more as a Billy Joel kind of guy with all the piano and keys.
You don't like Billy Joel,
I don't like Billy Joel, but I'm not even going to go down that lane with it. It's just, in my eyes, I think of him as the dude with the Telecaster and the gruff singing and the songwriting. And he doesn't have to rip a solo. Like, I know that he does. That's fine. But the amount of piano on this album and future albums genuinely pissed me off, because he stands on the front of these albums with his guitar and half the album is this organ or this piano. And I'm not discounting piano or keys in any way. It's just, it's not what I think of when I think of Bruce.
Yeah.
That might be my own misconception, but it's also what I feel like he kind of puts on as saying, like, as the front man with the guitar. Like, that's an iconic image of him.
Yeah.
You know? And so when I put on Blinded by the Light, I heard like some Grateful Dead riffing at the beginning, which is not the way to get to my heart, but I was open to it. But then it even came across as like some Billy Joel lyrics in his songwriting and songtelling. And that's fine, but it's the piano really distanced me on this record and future records. I think the only one that truly stood out to me in a positive way was Growing Up.
Love that one.
And it's because it sounds less like Billy Joel. It sounds less classically influenced, whereas other songs sound more arranged. Growing Up sounds like they wrote it on piano, but you could do that on guitar and that melody would be just as beautiful and perfect.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because he does come in with the acoustic guitar playing the exact same thing
Exactly.
as the band comes in. Yeah.
And that's why it works for me, aside from my sentimental reasons, because I wrote that's in Big Daddy, and that's I love that movie with Adam Sandler, which I know it's bad, but it's when that comes in, I'm like, oh god, this is great. I wanted less piano and I wanted more of, I guess, my Bruce that I was imagining in my head. I would have rathered that, like, quote unquote generic frontman with a guitar versus someone who's trying to let his band shine.
Yeah.
I think on later albums, if he went in reverse and came out as like a typical band that had the whatever 4, 6, 7 piece you want to have with keys, with sax. Don't get me wrong. I will be saying Clarence Clemens needs to be a bigger part of all of these albums. So I'm not even coming at the sax. Like he's untouchable.
Yes. Oh yeah, no, you don't touch a big man.
But there's too much piano playing for a shredder.
That did surprise me as a kid too when I really started listening to Bruce on my own, and I was just like, this is a lot of piano. Like I wish I could hear more guitar. So I definitely get that. But then you hear some songs where it really, really works. Like Lost in the Flood, which is like one of his most underrated songs.
Yeah.
It's like, it's one of my dad's favorites, and it's like the dark flip side to the fun, carefree living that he's expressed in other songs on the record. It's like setting the scene for Escape from New York, but with like heavy jazz.
Yes.
And it's like, but it's so singular in his discography, and yet goes on to shape so much of his music to come.
I really liked Lost in the Flood. That should be on my list. Just so you know, I think I told you, but if not, I started a playlist to keep track of Bruce songs, and I didn't add it. That should have been on there. But it's called BS I Like. When I listened to Lost in the Flood, I had this idea because the whole band comes in on him when he sings Jimmy the Saint.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that Green Day took that and ran with it for American Idiot, because American Idiot is pretty Bruce heavy.
Yes, I Googled it because I was like, there's no way that's a coincidence. That had to be a reference. But I cannot find a definitive answer if St. Jimmy is based on.
Well, I hope so.
Line.
But
yeah, I would think so.
That song also gave me Wilco vibes. And I like Wilco. So I was even saying to myself, like, why don't I like Bruce? Because I like Wilco.
Yeah.
So I like what comes after him. So why can't I get into him? This is what I was questioning and wrestling with as I listened to his original stuff.
That's kind of I kind of have the opposite thing of like, I'm not that crazy about artists that are influenced by Bruce very much. Like I like Wilco, but I can't like name many of their songs, and I don't really like care to dive that deep. Gaslight Anthem, same thing. Like I've liked what I've heard, but I don't feel like connected to it. Maybe because I'm just thinking of Bruce instead, you know. But that's interesting how it can be. That's more like U2 and Radiohead for you.
Yes.
You know. Fun fact about when he made this record, he had, I think, 7 of the songs done, and then Clive Davis said, "There's no hits. Go write a hit." So he wrote "Blinded by the Light" and "Spirit in the Night" in like one night or something like that. And that just makes me so mad that he puts all this effort into these songs that are genuine expressions of himself or the people he knows. And then when someone's like, go write something catchy, he's like, okay, and turns around like some amazing shit.
I'm curious, based on what you said about his background with his parents, and more specifically, the alcoholic father. I'm curious if that's a trauma response on his end, that he's able, when pushed up against the wall, he can deliver. Because growing up in that environment, you might be scared, you might have whatever feelings, and then you might have to act a certain way real quick just for pure safety of self.
Yeah.
So when he's got money coming his way and his boss man says, his boss man says, there's nothing on here for the masses. And he goes, okay, fine. And he does it. And it's not really a problem to him because he's good at it. Like he's good at figuring his way out of jams.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. That's just something I thought of right now as we were talking about that. And
It could be. I mean, he had his rebellious streak as a teenager, like skipping his high school graduation because they tried to make him cut his long hair and he just wouldn't do it. So he just like took a bus to Greenwich Village instead. So I know he's got issues with authority, but I think he likes a challenge. And when someone says like, why don't you write a hit song? He's like, okay, I can do that.
He notes in his memoir that you have to be arrogant and cocky on some level to lead a band.
Yes.
And I think that's when I really started getting into him, because he always rubbed me as super arrogant and cocky. And then when he said it from his mouth and explained his logic behind it, like you can't go and do a 3-hour concert like him or Dave Grohl and be shy.
Right.
So, you just can't do that if you want to have that level of energy in that time. Or maybe you can do it, but it would take a lot of energy on your end to do it night after night.
Yeah.
So when he said that in his book, I was like, I kind of respect you and like you a little bit more now, even though you are arrogant. And I find that repugnant. You knowing you're arrogant and kind of weaponizing it for yourself in a positive way, that's fair.
Yeah. Choosing to demand respect to keep the ship afloat is... And earning it, like having enough confidence in yourself to know, like, I know what I'm doing and people are going to see I know what I'm doing, so they're going to listen to me.
Right.
That's
right. And to be fair, I think he did earn it. I don't think it's unearned or anything like that. Yeah. It's just he had that attitude in him, and then he used it for good.
Yep. And maybe to pick up a girl or two along the way.
Well, that was one of his reasons for starting a band, right?
Yeah, I mean, isn't it for everybody?
Not for bassists.
And that's why it works the best for you, because you're not trying.
That's true.
Okay, so that same year, they released the second album. And by this time, the band is a little more put together. They've got a better sense of what they're doing now that they know they're going to do it. This album's called The Wildly Innocent and the E Street Shuffle, released November 5th, 1973. A fuller sound... Oh, God.
No. I'm foreshadowing my feelings.
No, I know you are. A fuller sounding, musically expansive, and more refined version of the last album, in no small part because the E Street Band was fully formed as the recording band by this point. This one probably surprised me the most, because I've always kind of lumped this and Greetings together in my mind.
I see why you would do that.
Yeah. But I've never noticed until now what a better version of Greetings this is. Yeah, there's still some songs that are, you might think, too long. I think it earns its length on pretty much every long song on the record. I think the long song this album ends with, New York City Serenade, is a much better ending than It's Hard to Be a Saint in the City, because that's a good song, but it doesn't feel like a closer to me, where New York City Serenade is meant to be.
Yes,
I agree with you, whether or not you like that is, that's fine. But I appreciate going into making an album with intentionality, that I feel much more on this album than Greetings just kind of feeling like a bunch of songs.
Yeah, which is often the case for first albums.
Yeah.
Where it's like they're super young, they're just very excited and hungry, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to really hold anything against him in that regard.
Yeah.
I think on the collection of songs thing, I got to be honest, I sighed really hard because I remember the E Street Shuffle as the first song, and I hated that song.
I can't believe that.
I hated it so much, and it's like it's awful for me, because I said I like his voice, I like his songwriting, but I think arrangement is what's bothering me here, and I think he gets better at it later on. But this sounds like jazz in the worst possible way, where everybody's doing their own thing. And if you listen to it in isolation, you'd be like, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. And it all comes together. And the only one that really works for me is Clarence.
Yeah.
And that's just because he's the spice. Like I don't think he can do wrong unless he's like not playing in key.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I was miserable listening to that song.
Wow.
And that's the shortest song on the album. And that's like the stark memory that I have for it.
That's wild, because I still get amazed every time that organ comes in, because it just sounds so, like, where it sits in the mix and like the sound that they have on it. It sounds like it's from another time, but not in the past and not really in the future. It just feels like another dimension. It always surprises me every time I hear it to me, jazz in the worst possible way is boring. You know, it's like
That's fair.
It's
Yeah.
like Muzak, Kenny G shit. Like this, you know, has energy. It has. It feels like a full band in a way more. I think more so than the last record.
I agree with that. I think it does feel much more like a real band.
Yeah.
I think it feels less like musicians playing a part and more like they are into their instruments on this. This is what colored my listening to the Wild Innocent and the E Street Shuffle. Because I went into it being like, okay, they're gonna find their footing on this one at least a little bit more, and I think they do.
Yeah.
But we were starting off on like neutral ground, and it just dipped so far for me.
Wow.
That it was hard to come back. But I think 4th of July, Asbury Park Sandy brought it back for me.
Great song.
Yeah, it clicks perfectly. It's a beautiful love song. It's simple. There's accordion on it, which can be, I think, very cheesy, but I loved it.
Yeah.
Like it fit well because you felt like you were on the boardwalk.
Yeah.
And like there was a circus or whatever the case might be. Like you felt like you were there. The horn section worked there for me in the way it didn't in E Street Shuffle on the previous song. It felt truly like the polar opposite of the first song.
Yeah. And it is like those two songs back to back is like quite a 1-2.
Which he does a lot.
down. Yeah.
He does a lot through his career where he says, this is what this album's going to sound like. And I go, eh.
Just kidding.
And then the second one, I'm like, that's way better. Why didn't we start with that one?
Yeah.
Like, maybe I would have been into E Street Shuffle if it came later. If he kind of warmed me up to that, what I feel was discordant.
Yeah.
But by starting on that level, that wasn't the message that I wanted or was looking for.
Which is funny because to me, I think it works as the opening, but I like the song. So I guess it just matters if you like the song or not. That all kind of comes back with Kitty's Back, which you didn't like, and that's one of my favorite songs.
Okay,
like,
so I don't know. I didn't not like it.
Okay.
I thought it sounded like a song that would be on Twin Peaks, playing from a fake band.
Right, you said that.
And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because I like Twin Peaks. But Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band are not that band.
I will say, I've seen this song on their last tour, and I was shocked that they even did it. They did like 4 songs from this album on the last tour, and this is not an album that gets a lot of love live.
Okay.
Or it does from the fans, but not from the band themselves. They did a 15-minute version of this song, and every single section of the band, which is now expanded to have like a full horn section, full backup singers, Susie Tyrell on the violin, like the E Street Band has like doubled in size over the years. And each single musician getting a solo to this just
that's exhausting
fun groove. Like I loved it, you know, because I'm not a big jam band person because I want to feel like it's going somewhere, but I can sit in a great groove forever. And I know the song, so I'm like, okay, this is amazing. I love how they're expanding this. And
I can't imagine 15 minutes of this because I thought 7 minutes was too long.
Yeah, no, I don't get that.
I was even happy when they came back from the detour in the 7 minutes of the song. I don't know, man. I think this is the most back and forth album for me.
Yeah.
Because there's a song that I really hate, and then the song that I really, really love, and then one where I'm like, now we're back dipping again, and it's back and forth all over for me. So for me, this one's very inconsistent. The parts that I hate, I really hated, and the parts that I liked, I really liked.
I don't think either of us liked Wild Billy's Circus Story.
That's a trash song.
Yeah, no,
that's a trash
not
song.
good.
That's
it's
like,
not good.
Sandy sounds like a boardwalk in the best way, whereas stupid Wild Billy Circus ends with a tuba. That pissed me off so much.
You hated that tuba.
I hated it so much.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you take a swing and it doesn't work.
Swings a lot on this one.
Yeah. But then there's Incident on 57th Street.
Untouchable.
Yep. Hooks for Days.
Yeah.
I noticed you had the note about that line that didn't age well. Was it, let those black boys in and light the soul flame?
Yeah.
Or something?
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily like problematic or anything, but it's just because I don't think he means it in a rude way.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But it's just like, dude, like that's
Half his band was black at this point. So like a third, I think.
It's not like he wasn't around black people,
Yeah.
or didn't respect them or anything like that. It's just like, dude, you sound so white when you say that. It's more corny than it is anything else to me.
But then we get to one of his greatest songs ever, Rosalita, Come Out Tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, not only does this earn its length, every single choice in this song is perfect.
I agree.
Like it jams, but like everything's paced well, so you don't even notice that it's like 7 minutes or 8 minutes long. And every single time I hear this song, after he says, "The record company, Rosie, just gave me a big advance," and he goes, "Oh, my ties were slashed." I get chills every single time. Like that is how you do a bass drop moment, you know, like a build up with a great payoff. I could talk about the song endlessly, and it's still one of his favorite love songs, which is funny to think of it in those terms.
Why?
Because I mean, I think typically when people think of love songs, they think of them as like sappy or overly romantic or ballads usually, you know, whereas this is a love song. It's a youthful, rebellious, fun song about people in young love, you know?
Yeah.
This is where he peaks as far as like that kind of like fun, carefree Bruce is, you know?
Yeah. I have nothing to disagree with. They say you showed me the live version of this that was longer than the recorded version of it, and it still feels fine in length. And that's me watching it on YouTube and not even being at the show. So like this one earns its length just like 57th Street earned its length for me.
Yeah.
And I actually really like that it's a fun love song.
Yeah.
Like that's when I said that I think he has novel songwriting. I think that's cool. I think that's new. Not a lot of people do that. Yeah. Like Blink-182 did it with First Date. But
it's cool if I hold your hand.
I do want to talk about New York City Serenade.
Yeah.
Because I know you like that song. I also like that song. I don't think to the same level as you.
Probably not. But
I don't think that's... I think I could. My problem is more about editing on this song than it is anything else, because this is another Billy Joel song to me. And this one pissed me off extra because it's a Billy Joel song about New York with a dude who's from New Jersey.
Oh, no.
And so I think this song, it comes out to like around 10 minutes. I did not need that first 90-second piano intro. After that, I think the song's immaculate.
Yeah.
But that, in the same way that starting the album with E Street Shuffle got me so down low that Sandy had to like bring me back up to neutral. That first 90 seconds, I was like, dude, this is so just like, we don't need this.
Yeah.
But the piano with that acoustic guitar, that's beautiful. That could be more Brucey than just the piano, because right now you just sound like Billy Joel to me.
Yeah.
And with the content, you sound even more Billy Joel to me.
It is weird that he has so many piano-heavy songs where it's just him and the piano, but he's not the one playing the piano.
Yes.
Like, because you will think of a Billy Joel or Elton John or someone like, because I mean that's just what you'd assume, right? Like that the person singing is the one playing the piano. I don't know. It's not a favorite of mine. I think it's a better closer than on the last album. Could definitely be edited down. I like the little hand drum that comes in like 2 minutes in. I think there's some like fun choices where you can see he's thinking more about arrangement and throwing things in, like the accordion on Sandy.
In the way that I thought Blinded by the Light was like shotgun spray of instruments, I don't think, aside from E Street Shuffle, I don't think this album is that. He's definitely getting better at arrangement. Yeah. And telling people this is where you come in. That's where you sit back. That's the melody you're playing. You can mess with it a little bit. Like he's getting better at being a band leader here.
Yeah.
And you could hear that on the album.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of all there is to say about that one, because now we got to get into the one that changes everything. So, 1975. Looking to capture the beauty, danger, sex, and wanderlust of rock and roll in a way no one else was doing at the time, Born to Run is the album, or the album Born to Run is one of his most significant stylistic departures and forms the blueprint of who he would come to truly be as an artist. Vinnie Mad Dog Lopez leaves the band at this point. He's being
What did he play again?
Drums.
Drums. Okay.
So he was being a difficult figure to be around, like pissing people off and getting into fights, and he was messing things up. And he had a wild quality to him on the drums. I mean, he was called Mad Dog, but I think Bruce could tell things needed to get pared down a little bit and the ship needed to get tighter. Mm-hmm. So between that and his behavioral stuff, he goes. And there will always be something a little missing to not have a frenetic drummer like him anymore. But then you go back and hear those, or especially on Greetings, like he's playing kind of the same drum beat on like 3 or 4 songs. And it's like, it's
a little monotonous.
Yeah. Which if you're going to go crazy differently, you know?
Be Keith Moon.
Yeah. Why not? Anyone could do it. So when they recorded the single, the title track, Born to Run, they hired a drummer named Ernest Boom Carter, who was going to stay in the band and be the new drummer. But he and piano player David Sanchez left at the same time to start a new project. So Sanchez is replaced by Roy Bittan on the piano. Carter is replaced by Max Weinberg on drums. You may know him as Conan O'Brien's band leading drummer for years on his late night show.
That's how I knew him.
Yeah. So this is the new E Street Band. It went from like basically half black, half white to an all white band in Clarence. Mm-hmm. And that changes things a little bit, but that's kind of on Bruce's mind. Mm-hmm. That he's like, I think we could really say something with this album cover, this image of me leaning on Clarence, mm-hmm. you know, me, a white guy in a black jacket, leaning on a black guy in a white shirt. It was a stark image for 1975, but it also shows a lot of playfulness between the two of them, and that comes out on stage in their chemistry and their energy live. But really, the album is Bruce trying to capture something different, and he kind of set the bar pretty high for himself that he wanted to make a game-changing rock and roll album. Mm-hmm. And he kind of did. You know, this was the first one that was really getting him attention. You know, he wasn't getting a lot of hits on his previous 2 albums, but this one really takes off, and there's a reason why you know a lot of the songs before you even hear the whole record. So what do you think of September 1st, 1975's classic album, Born to Run?
I don't think I feel as positively as history feels about it. I know this is Thunder Road.
Mm-hmm. That starts with Thunder Road.
Yeah, that's this album, and that's what I think of. I wrote you can't touch Born to Run. Like mm-hmm. I'm not even gonna fight on that or anything. Yeah. I was disappointed in Thunder Road. Mm-hmm. I know that's a classic of both Bruce stans and also just casual Bruce Springsteen people, that it's a hit song. Mm-hmm. What bothered me about that is that I think the song was really, really good, and then I think the outro is incredible, mm-hmm. and the outro is too short for me, mm-hmm. and that's what makes me sad, because I wanted Thunder Road to be a long song.
Yeah.
Especially if you're making a stance and you have something to say. Mm-hmm. I think that'd be a ballsy way to open an album, is by giving us one of those like long epic songs that you just so love to give us. Between Thunder Road and Born to Run, I feel like Born to Run does what I wanted Thunder Road to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know why he just didn't do it on both songs. If one is going to be, they're both going to be hits. Mm-hmm. But why couldn't you come out the gate swinging with like something like, I guess oomphy enough for me, but that's like a pretentious thing to say, because like I know I'm the standout, I'm in the minority.
Yeah, I mean, but that's your opinion, you know. Like if it's not hitting for you, it's not hitting for you. That's okay. I mean, I think this song is one of the few sing-along anthems I can think of that basically doesn't have a chorus.
Yeah.
And that's wild to me, that there's something about it that has gotten people for decades shouting at the top of their lungs, "You ain't a beauty, but hey, you're all right." You know? Like,
yeah, and that's a great fun line. Like,
it is.
There's nothing to say negative about it, but...
Oh, real quick. Yeah. What's the first line of this song? Is it "Screen door slams, Mary's dress sways," or "waves"?
Oh, it's been a minute since I heard this. I remember hearing "waves."
So it's actually "sways."
Okay.
And this is funny because people have been debating this for decades.
Isn't it kind of the same thing though? Like the verb, the action.
So that's why people debate it, because they're like, it sounds like it could be the same thing, but they're like, oh, but if her dress is waving, it's like she's subconsciously inviting him over. Like, it's not even her, it's just her embodiment. And he's just like, no, it sways. It even says waves in the liner notes of the album, and that's wrong.
That's funny.
That's the thing. I think a lot of people like to mystify Bruce even more than he does with his own writing, but people do that for all kinds of artists that they love. I'm trying not to do that now.
And I appreciate that you're trying not to do that. And I think that's a big part of what I also get frustrated with Bruce, is how people put him on this pedestal. Mm-hmm. And like they mythologize him so hard. That's why I really like his memoir, Born to Run.
Yeah.
Because the way he writes, he's like 100% not doing that.
Oh, no.
And he's very candid. And
yes.
in his candor, it's just like, oh, wow, everyone talks about you in this way. And he's like, yeah, screw them. Like he openly like puts them down.
This is why if I were going to recommend any audiobook, I would say go back and listen to this book read by him, because there is nothing better than hearing him in his like low controlled drawl kind of voice talking about their terrible fashion choices in the 80s and being like, we look, for lack of better term, gay.
I should listen to that.
It's great. But, the second song, 10th Avenue Freeze Out, classic.
I thought it sounded like a Blues Brothers song, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I like the Blues Brothers.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because that song is so fun. I think it's very funny that he was trying out the nickname Scooter, and that did not take off. But
I'm glad it didn't.
Yeah, but the boss will do. That's fine. The third song is Night, and I have a little fondness for it because I've seen him open a show with this.
Okay.
But it's not really one of my favorites. I feel like it's too much like other songs that do it better, its thing better.
My big thing was it sounds like the end of Thunder Road.
Yeah.
Which is not bad, but the rest of it's not memorable, whereas Thunder Road is to me.
But then Backstreets, I think we're really divided on this one because I love this song, but of course you hate
Backstreet's
Billy
not
Joel.
Back for me. I hated this. Because, again, it was another Billy Joel song. I even started like going harder.
All right,
here.
we need to address this Billy Joel thing because this keeps coming up.
Yeah.
And like, what's your problem with Billy Joel?
Honestly, same thing as Bruce. It's the same, and I respect them both in the same way. I think I find Billy Joel more amusing as a person because there's jokes about how he drunk drives through Long Island and like will crash into people's houses. Yeah. But he just has the same shtick on every album and every song to me. And the ones that hit really hit. I think they're super overplayed, but they're catchy for a reason. And truly feel the same, like you can copy and paste my feelings between the two of them. But he even has the same arrogance. I would even say he might be more arrogant than Bruce.
Billy Joel's way more arrogant than Bruce.
But I respect the arrogance because his whole thing with MSG was he's going to stop playing there when it stops selling out. And his standard is to sell out MSG. And when it stops selling out, he's like, all right, I'm going to go take my helicopter back to Long Island and never come back.
Yeah.
And I hate him and I respect that.
I know.
You know?
Because Billy Joel was also an artist that was playing in my house a lot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put him up as high for me as like Bruce or Jackson Browne, but I do really love some Billy Joel, like a couple records at least, like 52nd Street and The Stranger, and I'd even make a case for We Didn't Start the Fire a little bit. I know that's a hot take.
That's a very hot take.
Yeah. I think that song's not nearly as bad as all the attempts to modernize it or cover it, like Fall Out Boy, that have made that song worse in retrospect. Because everyone has tried to do their own version of it and it sucks. But I really like Billy Joel. But again, I don't have the same kind of reverence for him because to me, I'm not that interested in him as a person because he seems just kind of like an asshole.
Yeah, and I think he is.
Yeah, but Bruce seems like a guy you can get a beer with. And I think if that weren't true, we would have found out by now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I do have to say, for Backstreets, while I'm annoyed that it's another brittly piano song, I said it was like, it felt like a Western noir Like you like kind of like walked into a saloon for it, which not for me, but that's cool. Like it's like they're trying things on. It's just I didn't need more piano. He's literally on the cover with the guitar.
And there's guitar on this album.
Yeah, but not enough. Not enough. There's still a lot of piano.
Well, at this point, he's still the only guitarist in the band.
Yeah.
I think Stevie Van Zandt came on tour for this, but he wasn't on the record. I don't know. I love the buildup of this song. I think the buildup on this is so good that it tells me that Bruce must be amazing at fellatio, because it just teases you and then it explodes, and it's great. I think he makes a lot of his big band choices here, and it's just the right tempo to make Born to Run coming after it feel exciting, you know?
Yeah. That's actually what I said about this album, that this is like my platonic ideal of Bruce in the way like the instrumentation's busy. There's a lot of storytelling. You could see they veer off into like jam territory, but the leash is just long enough that you know they're going to come back kind of thing. But it's improvisational at the same time. The arrangement is stronger. The production is stronger. Everything's just better on this album than what's preceded it. Still, a lot of it. He's still trying some sounds on, though, that I don't think fully work for him.
A big reason for that is Jimmy Iovine worked on it. It was like his first album to be an engineer on. And this is where Bruce brings in John Landau. They met because I think he was writing for a magazine at the time and wrote that famous article, I Have Seen the Future of Rock and Roll, and it is Bruce Springsteen. And this is before Born to Run even came out. Bruce brought him in as like kind of an entourage guy because he felt like a kindred spirit with him. And he would later go on to become his manager and replace Mike Appel. And from here on, they've produced all of Bruce's records together. And I think that has something to do with why this starts to feel different than the other albums.
It's like his Jerry Finn.
Yeah, very much, yeah.
These last few songs after Born to Run, is there anything you want to say about Born to Run that you feel like isn't said enough of? Or like anything that stands out to you? For me, everything worked. Everything was just better. I even said I felt positive after hearing Born to Run that like I hope his discography gets better for me personally from here on out. Yeah. Because Born to Run hits so good.
Okay, that's very
like,
good to hear.
Yeah, like I was very positive after this. And then he had 3 more songs that brought me back down to earth.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, She's the One. I don't really care. You know, it's just kind of a basic infatuation song. The rhythm and syncopation are interesting and add some variety to the record, but I don't really care about it. I think Meeting Across the River is kind of a prototype of Atlantic City.
I have to re-listen to that now that you said that.
Not so much melodically, but like the idea of being desperate for work and going into the criminal underworld.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I noted the lyrics very strongly on that one. I didn't like the music because it felt too loungy, which he like sometimes likes to veer into. Yeah. But that was another one of the songs where it's like, I would love to read this as a story. It's the music's distracting me from how strong the storytelling is.
Jungleland.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you thought about the 9.5-minute Jungleland.
Man, it's a classic.
Is it?
Come on.
Is it? Because it's more piano.
I
don't know. He has a guitar on the
This
cover.
is why we never got a piano player in the LVP, because you hate them.
I don't. We have a song coming up that like I think can be as spacey as hell. For Jungleland, I thought the melody was fine. I know I'm being a hater with the piano. Yeah. And I even say I'm just really tired of the piano when he has a guitar on the cover. I feel like I know I'm judging a book by its cover, but then don't make it the cover. If you're saying, and I don't mean you particularly, but if you're saying such a big statement with Clarence on the cover wearing the black and white, okay, that's great. Why are you wearing a guitar then? If you have so much thought and put into everything else.
Because he plays guitar in the band.
That's great. He also clearly just really cares about piano so much that we get 9.5 minutes.
I think part of it is that pianos are just very hard to mix because they're so dominating. You know, like
which we'll talk about on Glory Days.
Oh God. Stay tuned for part 2 for that one. I don't know what it is about pianos that like when you put it in something, it just takes over everything. And maybe it was just a limitation of mixing at the time that like all you had was a full piano, a baby grand or whatever. So you're like you're just stuck with how loud it is, you know.
Yeah. That might be my problem with it, because I love Clarence's solo in here. I thought that was beautiful. I thought, like, he's speaking.
His solo makes the song.
Yeah, like it's incredible, and I love the way it ends the album. I thought this was a good album closer.
Definitely.
Right, and I like that it was darker. It was resolved, but you still felt a little uneasy with it, and the moaning was haunting.
Yeah.
At the end, like, it's a good, like, I don't get me wrong, I enjoy the song, but 10 minutes of like
It's really interesting when you compare it to Blinded by the Light, especially with that being an opener, because it's like a grander, darker, proggier version of that, and just shows how much a songwriting has matured when you compare them. Like, this isn't wordy for wordiness' sake. It's not trying to impress you with clever turns of phrase that you can't even catch in the fervor of the song. It takes its time and gives you a dynamic musical journey to go on and further set the scene without words. You know, like the most powerful emotional part is Clarence's sax, you know? Yeah, I think it's a great closer. I think it's the best closer yet. My dad tells this great story of when he came down here after 9/11, because he's a retired firefighter, and he came to, I think, do some training with New York Fire Department, and 9/11 had just happened like a year or two before, and so he's hanging out with a lot of firemen and cops in bars. He was with a friend from the fire department back home. He just turns to his friend and says, "Watch this," and he puts a song on the jukebox. And it's Jungle Land. By the end of the song, the entire bar is singing along.
Oh, nice.
And his friend was like, "How did you know they would do that?" He's like, "These are all New York and Jersey firefighters and cops. Like, they're Bruce fans."
Right.
You know? Which gets to an interesting thing way later about the cops and Bruce Springsteen in the 90s. I don't know if you've heard about this.
Tangentially and vaguely. I'm going to have to do some more research on it, because you're saying that and, like, you're itching something, you're scratching something in my brain.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about that.
I have to investigate that better before we get to that episode.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it about Born to Run. I mean, what else can you say about one of the most celebrated records ever, besides maybe the guitar should be louder?
Yeah.
But I do agree with that, because, like, discovering Bruce on my own, like, and really listening, like, with headphones, because I was so used to hearing it in my house all the time, I was like, where is the guitar?
Yeah.
Like, so I do get that. But now, to close out this episode, we have to talk about Darkness on the Edge of Town.
We do, which I love the title.
Yeah.
This feels like a Flannery O'Connor title.
That's one of his biggest inspirations, is Flannery O'Connor.
That comes back around on Nebraska.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So when I first listened to this album, before you dive into, like, the context of it, I listened to this back when I read Born to Run, the memoir, and I was so excited for it, and I was so disappointed by it, because what I imagined it to be, reading in his book, plus the concept of the album art with just his face looking haggard, plus the title, and then I got this album, I think my expectations were through the roof, or in a different dimension. So I think the way I feel about it is ultimately colored by having expectations, rather than what I actually get on the album and what's actually there.
It's funny you say that, because that's kind of what the fans' response was too, because it took 3 years for this album to come out. He was like, he had like 2 years of contract disputes with his first manager, Mike Appel, and people were expecting Born to Run 2, and this album is not that, but it has become a fan favorite over the years, and he recognizes that too. He started this album by listening to and starting to understand country music more, a lot of Hank Williams and stuff. And he decided to make an album where he imagined that the rebellious lovers of Born to Run turn the car around and head right back to Freehold, New Jersey.
I love his concepts.
Like if Born to Run is about them finally getting out, Darkness is about them turning around, coming back, and seeing what's left for them in the place that they came from. He wanted to stop running from his working class upbringing and take the time to examine the factors that kept his family, everyone he knew, and the people like them across America in the situations they're in. So this was meant to be a grown-up rock record, pared down so as to not need to outgrow rock music and go straight into country just to tell these stories.
Okay.
This is Steven Van Zandt's first album as a member of the band. So now there are 2 guitars in the band.
Hopefully we can start hearing them.
Yeah. And it took 80 songs pared down to 10 to get this album right.
Did he end up using any of them in the future for anything?
Yes. So for the 30th anniversary, I think, of this album, he put out an album called The Promise that's I think 30 outtake songs from this.
Okay.
Including some songs like Fire and Because the Night, which he ended up giving to the Pointer Sisters and Patti Smith, respectively, and they became huge hits for them.
Right.
So his band's looking at him like, why are you cutting that song from the album that's going to be huge?
Yeah.
And he was just going through each of these songs and being like, no, it's not right. It's not right, until he landed on the 10 that he got to make it probably his most intentional record ever because of just how much material he was working with pared down into what he wanted. Some of the stuff went on to be on The River. Some of it was on his 60 song B-side collection called Tracks from 1998. But the 10 on Darkness are the 10 he wanted you to hear to be able to call it Darkness on the Edge of Town. So let's just get into it. It starts with Badlands.
Which my reaction to was, it's Roy Orbison with guitar and sax solos. Which is not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing. It's just, I think that's going to become too much of a recurring thing on this album for me.
Okay.
But that's the vibe I got from it. It was fine. The entire time that we've been doing this, I've been thinking of social media puns with these titles.
Yeah.
In addition to podcast descriptions and whatnot. And consistently, every time I'm thinking about something, I'm like, Jungle Land was one of his songs, right? Yeah, it was one of his songs. Doesn't he have a song called Badlands too? Yeah, he does. But Jungle Land's also definitely a song title. And I would just get caught up on these titles because they're so similar to me. I'm just realizing now that they're also back to back.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The end. Jungle Land closes one album and Badlands starts the next.
And then The Promised Land is on this album too.
Messing me up, Bruce. There's no other words you can use.
I think it's a great tone setter.
I do too.
I think the balance is definitely there more. I don't think the piano's as domineering. Nothing compares to Adam Raised a Cain.
That was my first song in this whole listen through that I was like, yes, I get it. I put stuff on and I liked it and I enjoyed it, but Adam Raised a Cain was the first one that I don't remember being familiar with and loving.
This was one of my favorites as a kid.
Yeah.
And it's one of his most underrated songs and is probably still his heaviest rock song, which is funny because it's still got the piano and stuff and it's not a complicated drum beat. Max is a very minimalist drummer, basically to save his energy for the 3-hour live show. But there's just a meanness to it, like a real anger. And you hear it in his voice.
Everything.
Yeah.
That solo rips.
Yeah.
It's such a good solo.
It was the inspiration for the solo of Eat Your Heart Out, that early LVP song, yeah. I'd said if intergenerational trauma had a sound, it'd be that guitar solo.
Yep.
It's just so biting, and it gives you just enough to be like, okay, Bruce can really shred.
Yeah.
And if he wanted to, he could play that up. So in a way, it makes me respect him more that he doesn't lean on it as a crutch.
That's why it bothers me a little bit, because this is the 4th album we're talking about.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do much soloing whatsoever.
Yeah.
I understand not wanting to do it because you don't want to rely on it as a crutch. I think he went too far.
Yeah.
Where you could have done it a little bit. Not every song needs a solo. Respect.
Oh,
I got
definitely,
it.
yeah.
But the amount that lacks on these albums, that you are a shredder, you're not using your skill at all.
Yeah.
So I understand doing it on the first album where you're like, no, I really want to show myself as a songwriter. I don't want to just be a shredder.
Yeah.
That's fine. But then, dude, you had 2 more albums and you still didn't do it. And then you do this. I think those albums could have been more special or better to me with more of him doing what he does best. Again, not to drown out, because I know he wants to let his band shine. But, like, come on, man. Rip a solo. Do something cool with Clarence. Why not do that? Like,
then go see them live, man. He does it there.
I missed that boat.
You know, the next song, Something in the Night, I can only, like, describe that piano as mystical. Like, it just is I know it might sound too cheesy or Billy Joel to you, but, like, I don't know, between that and this, like, atmospheric organ sound we're getting from Danny Federici is just, like, it just opens up the space, especially once he starts, like, belting and the drums crash in. Like, it's just a lot of great dynamics in a way that I think don't let the piano just, like, overbear everything.
So I think I didn't compare this one to Billy Joel. I actually compared it to The Great Gig in the Sky by Pink Floyd, which is atmospheric, keys heavy, and moaning vocals.
Yeah.
And it just felt like he was riffing on that. And also, I said, is this a Roy Orbison album? Because there is, like, that Roy Orbison-ishness to it as well. But I agree with you 100%. I think this is the kind of keys I'd want to hear.
Yeah.
And not in the way that it's overbearing, like you said before about the mix. But I did note thus far of everything we've listened to, this is by far the best sounding album.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because the mix is better or technology got a little bit better in the 5 years he's been recording at this point, or it's more interesting to me. I don't know which.
Yeah.
But this album so far, easily just more accessible to me because I like listening to it more than the dryness and brittleness that came before.
So, you know, I had said Max Weinberg has always been a really solidly simple drummer, never doing more than what he needs, and keep the ship tight for a 4-hour E Street show. But on Candy's Room, I think that's probably my favorite drum performance of his. Just that 16th note thing he's doing on the hi-hat that then goes to the snare. It's a lot of good build up that it's more energy than we usually get from Max, and I like that.
It is. One of my notes about this album was I think all the drums sound extremely straightforward and simple on every song on this album, aside from Candy's Room.
Yeah, it's probably the only one. I will say, Racing in the Street, this one's amazing. It's like, per Bruce, this song is about the dark realities of thrill seekers in a small town who grew up listening to bubblegum pop songs about cars in the 1960s. It's a long song, but it strips away the self-indulgence of long songs on his previous albums, earning every second in storytelling, scene building, and subtext. It just keeps going because so does life, you know, when you don't die young and leave a pretty corpse in a street race. And the thing is, it's really hard to write a song about a midlife crisis before you're even 30.
Yeah.
And he somehow did that in 1978, you know, before we've had as much exposure to what that looks like and in media, you know. I don't know. I could go on about each of these songs for so long. So I'm going to pare it back a little bit. But I love the energy on The Promised Land. I love the straightforward story about his father with Factory. Prove It All Night is an incredible live song.
I'm glad you say live because it felt like a filler song to me on the album.
Yeah, I was shocked to see your note about that.
I got so trained to having guitar solos than sax solos on so many of these songs. So what stood out to me was that there was a sax solo, then a guitar solo. And it sounded like he was like, well, let's flip it to make it new.
Yeah, no, that's one of the best live ones. Something I never noticed before was on Streets of Fire, that I've always thought of this song as like the only skip on the album for me. I don't know why it's just never clicked before, but now there's something about when he says, like, he's talking about like being all pent up with rage and hearing someone knock at the door and looking for an excuse to shoot them. And he's like, he's basically saying, when he's saying, I want Streets of Fire, it's like he's saying, I want to go to hell because at least it'd be different than what I'm living right now.
Lord.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I never
I like that song.
I'd never dived into the song like that before. It all culminates with the title track at the end. It's kind of a summary of all the characters throughout the album. The street racers, Candy.
I called it a closing song of a musical.
Yeah. Like, everyone's still stuck where they are, stuck in lives of quiet desperation, and the song fades out because there's still no answers. There's no resolution. It's not going to bullshit you and say everything will work out, because no one can know that it will.
And that's what made me a little sad about the ending of this album, because I enjoyed it. I did like this album, probably the most of everything that had come before it, but it felt like a sleepy end to a sleepy album overall, where there was high energy moments, but not enough of them for me. And it bothered me that there was no resolution, because I was like, I want to go have a good dream after this, because it's like all coming to an end, even though it just keeps going on or whatever the case might be, but there's just no resolution.
Yeah.
And I really wanted the resolution on that one. So that I can't come at him in like an artistic way. That's a me like wanting way. Like he didn't give me what I wanted, which is good, because it makes it interesting.
And that might be exactly what he wanted you to feel.
Right. And that's why it's good. Like, that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
I can't say that's one of my favorite songs, but I liked what
I
it
wouldn't
did.
either.
Yeah.
I think it works purely as an ending. But I would never pick it out as like one of my favorite Bruce songs. I think it lives and dies by being the end of that album.
Yeah. We talk a lot about closing songs and them being singles. This could not be a single.
No.
Right. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Like, I think, although Prove It All Night could be a single.
Prove It All Night could be a single. Promised Land.
Had 'Em Raise the Cane could be a killer single. But that's like the Back to the Street kind of single, where it's like, oh, you guys aren't ready for that, but your kids are going to love it. Like,
Oh, Back to the Future.
yeah. Oh, what did I say?
Back to the Street.
Back to the Street. I was thinking about back streets.
All right, we've been talking about just the 70s Bruce for a long time, so we should take a little break.
We have. What are your thoughts on 70s Bruce as we close up here?
I mean, this is kind of the golden era in a way, you know, in the same way that like golden era comics, it's not the best, but it's the most singular. It's the most like groundbreaking, you know. That
one idea that you gave made me like this all so much more in the comparison that you do, because my going through it, I was a little burnt out on Bruce getting to the end of Darkness, even though I think progressively, album by album, he keeps improving. And I was happy with that, but he's just not hitting what I want to be hit with yet. And that's where I fell at the end of Darkness.
Okay. Well, then tune in next week for part 2 of our Bruce Springsteen deep dive that we haven't named the series for yet. Maybe we'll come up with something in the midst of recording some of these
See you down the river. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Filler. If you liked what you heard, please rate and review this episode to help others find it. For more recommendations and exploration of media we love, go to afterschoolspecial.xyz and follow Filler on Blue Sky. See you next time.
Oh, fuck, dude, we forgot to do a spindrift bit.